Hey guys, this is James with The Grind, and today I just wanted to talk about maybe from the hiring manager's perspective, how to hire a candidate and make them an employee that's going to be with your company for the long term. So how to hire somebody that fits into your culture and somebody that just ends up being a valuable and loyal employee. And there's a few things that you can do in the interview process to help solidify that candidate's longevity at your company. So we'll start with a couple of the tangibles. This is not at all a list that is complete or in its entirety. These are just a couple of the bullet points, some of the main things that I think could help. So one of the first things is to hire based on personality and coachability rather than just a great resume. So the experience is important, obviously, the certifications, the numbers, the awards, anything, whatever you're hiring based on experience, that is important, but a solid personality and somebody who is coachable and will listen to you and will take whatever advice you or their direct hiring manager gives them and make adjustments to be that. That is as important, in my opinion, more important than just having them on paper be the right fit. One of the next tangible things that you could do in the process is to check references. I know everybody checks references, but specifically, professional references, at least two. And, as we kind of say in the recruiting world, if a candidate gives you a reference, they're likely going to be a good one. So if you can, I also would recommend doing a covert reference. Now, never obviously somebody at the same company as them, and because you don't want them to get in trouble for looking or for being interested or talking to you. That can get pretty sensitive really quickly. But maybe the company right before where they were at, the position before where they were. If you have mutual connections on LinkedIn, that's a great way to do it. Or even to one of their references that they gave you, just ask them, hey, who else could I talk to? And get their opinion. And that's just one extra layer of security for you. Nextly, I would say, which is very important, don't offer them yes or no answers, questions with yes or no answers in the interview process. So more so situational questions. So one example would be, instead of asking a candidate, hey, do you have experience working with Agile? They can easily say yes or no, and you would not know one or the other. They could have just said yes. Ask them, pose a situation to them and how they would solve that using Agile, or ask them about a situation they've dealt with in the past and see how in depth they can go with you. If they're providing great details on the process and how it works and how they got around this, or if they're all able to solve a problem that you have using that software, then you know that they actually know what they're talking about. So situational questions are great. One of the last tangible things I would say, again, there's a million, these are just a couple, would be to meet them in person. Now, phone interviews are good for convenience if you just are swamped, or maybe it's a remote candidate, whatever it is. Phone interviews are good, not great. You can learn a lot about somebody in the first 5 seconds from eye contact and how they shake your hand and how they present themselves and grooming and all of the things that you can get out of an in-person meeting. I would just highly recommend it, face-to-face stuff, especially if you're working with a recruiter or you have someone in your HR who's already done a phone screen. I think a second phone screen with you is not completely unusable, but face-to-face is the best way to go. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about too is, once you have the right person in, a couple of things to keep them, because it's not just about interviewing and hiring the right person, but it's more so how you treat them once they get in. And this can tie back into the hiring process by how you sell/market your position and your company during the interview process. What I mean by that is promoting from within. That is a great, healthy way to build stability and build a room for advancement for your current employees. And then tying this back to the hiring process, as mentioned, whenever you're interviewing someone, you can let them know, hey, we want you to be here long term, and you can actually mean it by giving examples of people that have come in at that level and moved up within the organization. So if at all possible, promoting from within the company rather than external. I know it's not feasible for every size company in every situation, but it's ideal. Secondly, pay your people. You, in a lot of situations, get what you pay for. So this can come into something we'll get to in just a minute about trusting your recruiters, trusting your HR people, trusting your talent acquisition in-house folks. Whoever you're trusting to help you with the process, listen to them, because their job all day is talking to candidates and hiring managers and figuring out where everybody else is getting paid, what they're getting paid, remote access, all the flexibility within the current schedule. There's a lot of things that you could learn by listening to the people with the boots on the ground who are actually talking to the folks. And so if you're underpaying a role by $10,000, you're probably going to get a candidate who's maybe not quite as qualified personality wise or on paper than somebody who would be at that next tier. So lastly, and I know I'll try to keep this one a little bit more brief than the last one, but is what, just how to approach a hiring process in general. So what I mean by that is, we've gone over a couple of tangible things you can do. We've gone over a couple of ways to keep people, but when approaching the hiring process at all, as you go into it, understand where the economy's at and be realistic about time frame that it's going to take to find the right person, which could, you might need patience, especially with the unemployment being where it's at. Being realistic about what it's going to cost and what your company can afford, and then measuring those two together to make sure that your expectations aren't a 10 caliber, 20 plus year experience person when your budget really allows for somebody with maybe 4 or 5 years experience. So you're going to have to measure that out and talk to your team and see what it is, but then try to be realistic about it. If you can't find a candidate within a month of really actively looking and a devoted search program, your parameters are probably a little bit off. So keep that in mind. Another thing I would say is don't waste a lot of people's time. If you know that you have to have a bachelor's degree and somebody looks good on paper, they've got everything else, but you're not going to be able to get that person through the screening process because of the degree, which I don't really agree with, but it's another video. Don't even interview them. Don't waste your time or the recruiter's time or your team's time or the candidate's time for that matter. If they're not a fit at all and there's no flexibility, don't go forward with it. One of the third things, and this is just kind of tying back to this first thing as far as how to approach it, is to stay open-minded. So there's a lot of search parameters that you could tweak just a little bit and open up an entirely new candidate pool. And what I mean by that is, if you're not open to a remote possibility, if you're not open to maybe 1 day a week work from home, or coming in an hour early, leaving an hour early, or $3,000 or $4,000, I mean, you don't want to lose the perfect candidate for less than like $1 an hour, or you don't want to lose them for something that you're not giving the recruiting team or your team that's looking for them. But any details like that you think you could tweak, whether it's money, location, remote, flexibility, whether it's a relocation package, benefits package, there's a ton of ways that you could expand a search dramatically by just a simple tweak in what you can and can't do. Even like a degree, there's just so many ways, but just keep an open mind with it. And lastly, we'll close with this. Most importantly, I think when trying to grow a team, and especially if you're having multiple positions added at once, that can be a lot of change for your existing employees, your loyal people who've been with you for years. You don't want to sacrifice that culture that you have already in place and those loyal people for somebody who has just a great resume, but you're unsure about the culture fit. Hire with the culture you want to have in mind. Hire with the team environment that you want in mind. Whatever your goals are for this year and for the foreseeable future for your company, hire based on that mindset and envision what you want your team to look like and go after that candidate. So it's not just on paper. It's not just a bachelor's in a certain degree. It's not just a certain certification. In most cases, you can train the right person. If they are the right person, you can train them because they're going to have a desire to learn and a coachability aspect to it, and they're going to have a desire to grow within the organization. They're going to want the upward mobility we talked about, but you might not get a chance to have that right person if you cut them because of maybe one bullet point on the resume throws you off. So just hire for the culture, hire for the fit, hire on the personality, and get to know these people in person when making your decisions, because that's just the most healthy way to do it. And that's the way to create, again, longevity. Short stints, you could definitely solve a couple of problems with somebody who's perfect on paper and you don't spend the time to get to know them. But if we're talking about building a legacy and building a team that can grow from within and making you look really good as a hiring manager, hire based on the culture. So those are a few things. Like I said, a ton of stuff that we could dive into here. I'm sure we'll do more videos going further in depth, but wanted to give some of the highlights that I talked to about quite a bit. So again, subscribe, like if you want to hear more. I do have a social media platform now where I'll just like do clips and let you guys know like when new stuff is coming out. But really enjoying creating this resource. It's actually pretty fun for me. So give me a follow, let me know, call me, email me, whatever you want to do if you want to dive into a certain topic or just ask me some questions. But looking forward to talking to you guys in a few days, maybe a week. We'll be right back at it. Thanks.